Okay, Rabbi say, let's go. Halachos Sheva Brachos. There's an isser for the chassan and kala to go out by themselves. If they're going to go somewhere, they need to be with somebody else, what we usually call a shomer. When does that isser start? So if you write poskim, that isser starts on the day of the chasana. If you Rav Shlomo Zalman, it starts the Matzah Shabbos before. And how long does that isser continue? That isser continues throughout Sheva Brachos. So either from the day of Sheva Brachos until the end of Sheva Brachos, or Lefi Rav Shlomo Zalman, from the Matzah Shabbos before till the end of Sheva Brachos, there is the isser for the chassan and kala to go out by themselves. Now, what is the reason for this isser? So there's two reasons brought. One reason is because of mazikim. Apparently there's some form of ayin hara on the chassan and the kala, and therefore there's a chashash that there's mazikim that are going to get them if they are alone. The other reason is it's not befitting, it's pasnished for a melech. It's not befitting for a melech or for a malka to be by themselves, to be walking around by themselves. Now, what about her being home alone? What about being in the house by yourself? Is this only isser of going out, or is there isser of just being home as well? So the Aruch HaShulchan says there's an isser for her to be even at home alone. Rav Yashiv says that the minig is that we're not machmir for this Aruch HaShulchan, and the minig is we allow her to be home alone. We're not choshish for this Aruch HaShulchan. Now let's just think about this for a second. I understand the time of it not being befitting, it's pasnished for a malka to be alone. Okay, I think at home we don't have the issue of pasnish. It's not pasnish to be home by yourself. But the issue of mazikin, why is Rav Yasha saying that you're allowed to be at home? Surely it's the issue of mazikim. So I think we see in Chazal this idea of being hoilich b'derech yichidi. When you go outside on the roads, there's more of a chashash of mazikim. Apparently, I don't know so much about the spooky stuff, but mazikim are more common when you are in a outside on the derech setting as opposed to being in a at-home setting. Okay, there's Rosh Shlomo Zalman says that the chassan is allowed to go to davening, and why is he allowed to go to davening? Because there's people on the street. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on where you are. Definitely Yerushalayim, Brooklyn, Lakewood, wherever you may be. So 5 towns, there's people on the street, and if there's people on the street, therefore he's allowed to go to davening. Now, if we take a second to think about this Rosh Shlomo Zalman, Lefi, the reason of mazikim, great, I understand. If there's people on the street, apparently the mazikim like attacking when somebody's by themselves. If there's people on the street, we have no chashash of mazikim. But what about the issue of pasnished? Surely it's pasnished for him to go by himself. So tzarichin, I don't actually have a clear answer to why Rav Shlomo Zalman isn't concerned about the pasnished idea. Maybe if you're going with dvar mitzvah, because he gives an example, going to davening, maybe when you see going to a mitzvah, it's not so pasnish, because everybody, depending on how great you are, even without an escort, you're going to go to do a mitzvah. Maybe, but it's certainly not mochrach. What do you think about leaving the kala in the car? So you jump into Landau's for mincha, and you want to leave the kala in the car. So I was thinking, it's not so pashut. Now you're already outside, you get taina pasnished, and she's maybe by herself in the car. Maybe there's an issue of mazikim. But I think the minig is to be meipkol. Maybe we could apply that idea that we said before, that when you're by yourself in the house, the Rav Yashiv said that we don't care about the Aruch HaShulchan. Maybe the car is kind of like your property. Maybe we could do that, be miyashiv the minig that I think people are mekel, or maybe it's just amaratzis. But I think there's room to be mekel. Okay. Now, there's an isser during the time of Sheva Brachos. There is a isser melacha. It's a time that the chassan is not allowed to work during the time period of Sheva Brachos. Does it apply to the kala? So Lefi Bright Paiskim, it actually does not apply to the Kala, and the Chazon Ish says it does apply to the Kala, the Isser Malacha as well. What is the reason for this Isser Malacha? So there's three reasons brought. Seemingly what seems to be the main reason is so the Chassan could have time to be Mesameach the Kala. He could have focus, time, both in terms of kamas time and in terms of mental focus, to be able to focus on his job of being Mesameach the Kala. And once again, if the Kala's at work, it's going to be pretty difficult. So the Kala's not going to work. The Pirchei de Rebbe Lezer says he's a king. Kings do not go and work in public. You're king, yes, you sit at the table to make the big decisions about what you're going to do. There is definitely work for a king to do, but a king doesn't work in a public setting, and therefore you don't go out and work. Number 3 is it's a regal. It's Yontif for him. You don't go to work on Yontif, and therefore those are the 3 reasons that a Chassan does not go to work. Now, what if the Kala is Mekel and says, I want you to work. Tachlis, it's all about the Benjamins. I want you to work. Do we allow him to go to work? So I would have thought, if you would have asked me, no, because yes, I understand maybe she could be Mekel on the Mesameach's Kala reason. But what about the fact that he's a Melech? It's pasnished. And what about the fact that it's a regal? However, Lamaisa, to my surprise, it's so Lamaisa that Shabina Rav is Mekel, that if she is Michael, then we allow him to go to work. I would say like this, if he's able to do work which is, Bitsina at house, go on the computer for 2 hours or whatever, that's a lot better than B'fahesa going to work. Okay. Now, which malachas are included in this me'isr? What is asr for a chassan to do? Zat the Chazon Ish, it's just like Chalamoid. Now, I know what you're thinking. Chalamoid? I thought you could do everything on Chalamoid. Okay, this is going to be a different share maybe one time, or maybe I won't give it. I don't want to ruin everybody's Chalamoid. There are lots of halachos in what you could and can't do on Chalamoid, and it's pretty restrictive actually. And the Chazon Ish says that a chassan's Isser Malacha is like the Surim of Chalamoid. Most Shitas hold that it's any malacha which has tircha associated. So if there's a malacha that you want to do, and you you do fun things together, which aren't a tircha, it's fun, but it's a malacha, Lefi Right Poskim, that's fine, that's not a problem. And everybody agrees that when it comes to bodily needs, when I mean by bodily needs, I mean things like shaving and haircuts and stuff like that, that is certainly mutter during Sheva Brachos. Okay, now, how long does Sheva Brachos last? So, first time marriage, him, her, 7 days, right? We know that's easy. First time marriage for him and not her, or first time marriage for her and not him, where only one of them it's a first time marriage. Once again, 7 days. If either of them are first timer, I don't care if it's her first time and his 27th time, it's going to be 7 days of Sheva Brachos. Now this is where it gets a little confusing, and I've seen people get this wrong. People are very confused, misunderstanding over here. What about second marriage for him, second marriage for her? I don't care whether the first marriage ended in divorce or death, but it's a second marriage for both of them. How long is Sheva Brachos? So the brachos, meaning the 7 brachos after benching, that lasts 1 day. The day of the chasana. You have your Sheva Brachos at the chasana, zehu, done. No more Sheva Brachos. So I once heard somebody say that they're going to a Sheva Brachos to somebody, second time marriage. I don't know. Sheva Brachos Levatala. Maybe that's where they were going, but they can't be going to a Sheva Brachos. Okay, but here's where it's a little confusing. The Isser Malacha lasts for 3 days. So that's where I assume some people have gotten it wrong, because the Isser Malacha and the mitzvah being Mesameachas Hakala and the no tachnon, tachas, that's 3 days. But the actual 7 brachos after benching, that only lasts for 1 day. Okay, now, in order to make Sheva Brachos, how many people do you need there? So you need 10 men over bar mitzvah to have Sheva Brachos. Out of those 10 men, 7 of those men need to have eaten bread. L'chatchila, we want everybody to eat bread. But it's not a bad b'diavad. It's only a little bit of a b'diavad if you have at least 7 who have eaten bread. The other 3 should eat l'chatchila mezainis. B'diavad, as long as they ate anything more than water, they will count for the Sheva Brachos. And it's not 10 plus the chasen, it's 9 plus the chasen. The chasen counts as 10 as long as he's over a mitzvah. Yeah, I think that should be the case. Yeah. So, lechatchila, the chasen and kala should eat to be for the Sheva Brachos to happen. Lechatchila, they should eat bread for it to happen. B'diavad, l'maisa. So l'maisa, Rav Yoshev and Rav Shlomo Zalman both say that you can make Sheva Brachos even if the chassan and kala did not eat. So sometimes this happens with the chassan and kala. They show up really late, and they're pretty much done the meal already, and now they show up, and now the question is, could you make Sheva Brachos? The answer is yes, you could make Sheva Brachos. But we should try to get them to eat a little something. More than water. Water seltzer, that won't work, but try to get them to have a little something, because with a little something, then it's still with them.
Does it help if everyone else has finished their Suda and they come in and start eating?
Well, I would want one of those 10 people to eat a little bit as well, just to be mamshich the Suda a little bit. But once again, l'maisa, Rav Yoshev and Shlomo Zalman are mekel even without them eating at all. So it will work, but once again, we're in b'diavad land. The chassan and kala need to be there for at least some part of the Suda. Now, what if the chassan and kala need to leave early? Could you make Sheva Brachos after they already booked? They're gone, they're done. When could this happen? So once in a while you have a case where chassan and kala need to get on a flight. Sometimes you have the boys' side is from this place and the girls' side is from that place, and mid Sheva Brachos they're flying out from this place to that place. And now they have a flight at 10 o'clock, and when they're sitting at Sheva Brachos, I'm like, tachlis, we gotta go. So they book. The best thing, obviously, is to try to get the Sheva Brachos on the road while they're still there. But let's say it's pashut not happening. The timing didn't work. Could you continue to make Sheva Brachos after they leave? So some poskim say you cannot make Sheva Brachos. If you got no chassan and kala, you got no Sheva Brachos. L'maisa, Rav Yoshev says that since the Suda is done l'chvoid the chassan and kala, you're allowed to make Sheva Brachos. It's for their kavod. And therefore, he allows to make Sheva Brachos. And I found the raya for Rav Yoshev. I wrote down where it was. In the Shulchan Aruch Even Ezra, Samach Beis, Sifkat and Yud Aleph, which it says there that there used to be a minhag. I guess they didn't have these big, massive halls. And they would have the chuppah, and then it says if everybody would go into their own room to have different meals. Let's say you had 100 people at the chasana, and they would have, let's say, 10 rooms, 10 men in each room, and then each room can make their own Sheva Brachos. That's how you do it. Each room will make their own Sheva Brachos because each room is not eating biyachad; they're each eating by themselves, and I guess they didn't have a big enough hall, and that's fine. Now, it's not a raya, it's not a mukhrach raya, but it's a l'chayra raya. I don't assume that the chassan and kala were in every room for every stage of Sheva Brachos. L'chayra, each room made Sheva Brachos without the chassan and kala. As I'm saying, it's not mukhrach, because you could claim that they went into every room, Sheva Brachos, and they went to that room, Sheva Brachos, they went to that room, Sheva Brachos, but it's unlikely.
Or the building's been started.
But in fact, we remain separate Sheva Brachos in each room. So that means it's a separate eating area. So the they made the Sheva Brachos without the chassan and kala. And I think that's a raya for Rav Yoshev that you can make the Sheva Brachos without the chassan and kala. As I said, it's not mukhrach, because you could claim that the Metzias was the chassan and kala were going from room to room to room. But it doesn't sound like it. And it doesn't say in the Shulchan Aruch that you need them to go from room to room to be there. So it sounds like you do not need the Chassid and Kala for the Sheva Brachos. I would rely on that, Lamaisa. What happens if you lose the minyan before starting Sheva Brachos? And this happens. You start Sheva Brachos with, especially if you don't have a whole big 30 people Sheva Brachos. Let's say you have one of these 10 people execs. This guy, I have to run. I have a meeting. That guy has that Salah call. He runs out. It happens. Now you only have 9. You only have 8. Could you have Sheva Brachos? Answer is no. You cannot have Sheva Brachos. No Sheva Brachos. No minyan. No Sheva Brachos. If you started the Sheva Brachos, you made 2 brachos, and then Donnie runs out on Hatzalah call, so then you could continue the Sheva Brachos. Once you started, you could continue. One also point, which you may, it's very ironic, but this is actually before I get to that, one more thing also. I'm saying that you need a minyan. Everybody should make sure by Sheva Brachos, once in a while you have that mumble guy. That's a problem. You shouldn't have any mumble guys saying the Sheva Brachos. Everybody should say it loud enough that 10 men could hear. You should have 10 men here to be fully be to the minyan. Now, where is this negea, this idea that you need 10 people? So it's actually ironic, but the chuppah itself. Why? Because by the chuppah, a lot of times you say it over a microphone. Now, I'm not getting involved in the whole shayla where you can answer a main over a microphone or not. Maybe I will get involved. But Kitzer, you could. We have a raya from the shul in Alexandria that if you see what's going on, they wave flags, and you know what's going on in the matzah, then you're allowed to answer amen. So the chayra, same thing. When somebody says a bracha with a microphone, you can tell what's going on from the matzah. Not with flags, even better, you could hear it. So the chayra, you could say amen to that bracha. However, are you yoitza doing it with a minyan? The answer is l'chayra not, because it's not the actual voice of the one making the bracha. So you should try to be makbid. And this is mostly negated by a chuppah. You should try to have 10 people that could hear it without the microphone. Once again, as long as the guy says it decently loud, it's not such an issue. You usually have under the chuppah, you have enough people there. You have, the chassan, the chassan's father, the shver, the edim, the masada kedushin, the guy handling the wine, the guy making the announcement. You get close to there anyways. But it's something that's, good to be careful. It's good if there's 2 other people with the listening ear to make sure that there's 10 people hearing the bracha itself without the microphone. Okay, weiter. Now, this is something that I've seen people get wrong, and I understand why they get it wrong. It's called amratzis. Like this. There's a halacha that you can only make Sheva Brachos on a meal that was done l'chvoid the chassan and the kala. Yeah, l'chvoid the chassan and the kala. So, therefore, let's just give an example. Look, what a surprise! The chassan and kala just showed up to the cousin's bris. Oh, so nice to see you. It would be so cute if we make Sheva Brachos. So cute. Levatala. Bracha levatala is so cute. But if you were marbe b'suda, b'shvilem, if you added something to the suda before, they're coming, let's do an extra dish. We'll put out a little extra platter or something by the bris. Put an extra bottle of booze out. The chvoid, the chassan, and the kala. Then, no problem. Then you could go and have Sheva Brachos by this bris. I say people often don't know this. Another thing, shul, different the Haimish world, they have shalshudas in shul every week. Oh look, the chassan's here by shul. Gavaldik. Let's make Sheva Brachos. You can't do it unless you're marba. Sometimes you'll have it on a plane. Oh, there's a chassan and kala here. Gishmak, let's do Sheva Brachos. You got to pull out the duty free. You pull out the duty free bottle. Oh, you're marba. It's not just the food from the plane meals. Then you can do the Sheva Brachos on the plane. But without being marba for them, then you are not allowed to make Sheva Brachos because it's not a suda for their kavod. Okay. There's a lot of strange misconceptions by Sheva Brachos. I just want to make them clear. This might sound obvious to you, but just because it's obvious to you, it's not obvious to him. Because I've seen this before. I've been asked these questions. A chassan and kala, yes, can go out. They could eat bread at home. They could eat bread in a restaurant. They could wash, even though there's no minyan and Sheva Brachos. It is no problem. There's no like, oh, but what am I going to, how could I wash? How could I eat bread if there's going to be no Sheva Brachos? Not a problem. There's no issue whatsoever, either way. And historically, these making so many Sheva Brachos is a relatively newish idea. Now, next point, and this is a real big point. You don't need Sheva Brachos every day. So many people think that there's a chiyuv every single day of those 7 days need Sheva Brachos. Not true. Absolutely not. It says that nowhere. You do not need Sheva Brachos every day. For some people, this is a real stressful, oh my gosh, I only have 4 people to make Sheva Brachos. What am I going to do? No problem. So only have 4 Sheva Brachos. You do not, it's really not fair. Our side is doing 4 and their side is only doing 1. Okay. It's really not a problem. You don't need more Sheva Brachos. If you have lots of friends and lots of relatives who have lots of money and lots of free time, then making lots of Sheva Brachos is a beautiful, beautiful mitzvah. Beautiful. And you get schar for doing this beautiful mitzvah. But if you don't have lots of friends and relatives who don't have lots of money and lots of free time, then there's no need to stress yourself out with making lots of Sheva Brachos. Now, fine. There's another halacha that we want to discuss within Sheva Brachos, which is the halacha of panim chadashes. A new person, new faces. The idea is this new person that wasn't at the wedding and wasn't at the previous Sheva Brachos is going to bring new simcha to the chassan and kala. And this person who's going to bring new happiness to the chassan and kala is a requirement to make new Sheva Brachos. Because for the l'chvay, this new element of simcha, that we have this new person here. Now, the minhag of the Svardim, shows you need 2 panim chadashes. The minhag of Ashkenazim is you only need 1 panim chadashes. Now, who qualifies to be a panim chadashes? So lichatchila, it should be somebody who makes the chassan and kala happy. Often this is challenging because most of the people that make them happy were at the wedding. So sometimes this can be pretty challenging. Now, lemaisa, if it makes one of the parents of the chassan or parents of the kala happy, that's also fine. It's better the chassan and kala, but that's also fine. They're part of the bali simcha. Now, what about a woman? Does a woman count to be panim chadashes? So lefi many poskim, yes. Lefi many poskim, no. What's the debate based off? So the debate is based off women. You might want to fast forward 2 minutes. In general, there's greater chashivas to when the guest is a man. A man generally represents greater chashivas. It's more chashiv to somebody when you have the man guest come. So I would say if the woman guest is a prestigious woman, it's Rebbitzin, whoever came, one of her principal from seminary, or I don't know, whatever it is, somebody prestigious, or I'm not saying it necessarily should be this way, but I am part of the world we live in. Oh, Mrs. Richie Rich came over here, she's a very prestigious lady. So if it's somebody that catches people's attention, Mrs. Whoever came, Rebbitzin whoever came, then l'chayra, there's definitely room to be makel to count her as a panim chadashes. But if it's some little quiet lady that nobody knows who she is, it's much more b'diavad to rely on her as a panim chadashes. Okay. What about if it's a random person? And this happens very often. This happens very often when you can't find somebody, or sometimes they have to pull somebody off the street. Or the Jewish waiter, they pull in the Jewish waiter to make him the panim chadashos, because listen, we don't have panim chadashos. And as I mentioned before, it's sometimes it's a big challenge to find the panim chadashos, because most of the people that are important were at the wedding. L'maisa, it's a big fight. Rav Elyashiv paskins that as long as it's not adam bazoi, then it's okay. What does it mean by adam bazoi? The chayr like this, meaning if it's a guy who's like, chatzi from, chatzi not from, some guy who looks like a nebuch from the street, whatever, not pashut. But if he's somebody who's more respectable, then there's definitely more room to rely on him. But l'maisa, it's still hard to understand. Even if it's let's say it's a random person, but he's respectable. Why should that person count as panim chadashos? Does that person bring simcha to the chassan and the kala? So let's explain. Those against say he's a random guy. The machmirim say he's a random guy. He's not bringing any simcha to the chassan and kala. What do the mekilim say? They say, but he's a yid. Do you know a chashiv a yid? So, how do we paskin? Personally, I would say it kind of depends. It depends on two factors. First of all, I think it depends on the guy. Is this a guy who's like sitting on the side, strange, quiet, minding his own business? It's a little bit more difficult. Or is it the guy coming in with a big smile, cracking a joke, geschmack guy? Then it might be easier. If the guy's getting on your nerves, it's for sure a problem. But if he's a geschmack guy, smiling, gewaldig, simcha, where's the chassan? Shalom aleichem. Then l'chayr, there's much more room to be mekel. The other factor to take into account is what type of chassan is this? Meaning, like this. If he's a Joey Newcomb, every Jew is a big tzaddik, I love every yid, thank you Hashem, geschmack a yid. So then there's much more room to be makel with this, because he's the chashav a yid, and therefore geschmack. But if he's somebody who's not so into that, and he's not every Jew is a big tzaddik type of guy, without getting involved whether that's the right hashkafa or not. I'm not getting involved in that today, smarter than that. But if he's not so into this, not love every yid type of guy, then it's much more difficult, because how can you say that he's mareh b'simcha, he enhances the simcha? No, he doesn't. So it's much more difficult to say. I would say like this: if this chassan was driving by himself, would he pick up that guy for a hitch, to give him a hitch? If he would pick up that guy to give him a hitch, so I think we're doing pretty well. If he's the type of guy who says, I'm not interested in this guy being in the car, and he would drive on, it would be a problem. L'maisa, how do we paskin? So it's going to be very difficult to start saying, if somebody called me up and asked me, could we count this guy as a panim chadashos? I'm not going to start asking, well, it depends. Is the chassan a nice guy or not such a nice guy? You're not going to start doing that. So l'maisa, I think the minig is that we're mekel, but just to understand the shayla a little bit more. Fine. Weiter. A katan does not count as a panim chadashos. He's not chashav enough to count. But here's an interesting one. If somebody was a katan at the wedding, but he became a bar mitzvah in the middle of Sheva Brachos, and he was at the chasana, so the place can say that he counts as a panim chadashos. He wasn't an ish at the wedding, and he's an ish now, and he's a panim chadashos. I actually like this not so much for the lumdisha explanation that I just gave, but I like it as a practical point. I think when the new bar mitzvah boy comes, he adds like a geschmack to the simcha. The bar mitzvah boy is here. It definitely adds something. There's a geschmack there, which before he was a bar mitzvah boy, he wasn't able to add that geschmack. So therefore, I like this idea. I like this psak. I like the Baal Batish side of it more than the Lumdish side. I'm not disagreeing with the Lumdish side, but I like the Baal Batish side. Okay. Lechatchila, the panim chadashos should eat. B'diavad, if the panim chadashos didn't eat, it's okay. Now, what if you went to the chuppah and you went to the chuppah and you left after the chuppah? Could you still be the panim chadashos? So, the poskim say yes. What about if you ate at the shmorg? Now, let me just explain for a second. I know I have some people listen to the Shiur who are from America, some people Eretz Yisrael. Shmorg in America is not that little piece of cake and little thing of shivas that you have before the weddings in Eretz Yisrael. We're talking about a ganze meal for a king with carving stations, with pastrami and short ribs, and they probably have those meat boards by now. Sushi's a chiyuv, ganze works, a whole massive spread that everybody could eat right before they go to their massive meal afterwards. Why you need 2 meals? Good kasha. But somebody ate at the shmorg and then went to the chuppah. Could they be a panim chadashos? So, the Maisa, the Ber Moshe, and the Netta Gavriel say that yes, he still qualifies as panim chadashos. To me, this was a big chiddush. And I know I would have said, maybe the Ber Moshe, the Batzina Rav, he was nifter, 30 years ago or something like that. So you could say maybe the smorgasbords weren't the same at the time of the Ber Moshe, even though he was in Bar Park. But maybe the smorgasbords weren't like today. But the Netta Gavriel, he's still alive and he still lives in Bar Park. He knows what a smorgasbord looks like. So I find this to be a mechudesh to psak, that even when you ate the smorgasbord, you're still a panim chadashos. I guess the idea is before the chuppah, the Sudas mitzvah hasn't actually started yet. Even though by a siyum we don't exactly say the same gather, because by a siyum we sometimes start eating before the minhag is to start eating, or at least washing for sure, before the start of the actual siyum. So it seems to be over here they're counting the meal that happens before the chasana and before the Sheva Brachos at the chasana, to be specific, as under a zaytik zach, something beforehand, which to me is a chiddush, but l'maisa, I'm smarter than arguing with Netta Gavriel. So that's the psak. The psak is that if you go to the smorgasbord and the chuppah, you could still be panim chadashos. Okay. If you're at the dancing, you cannot be panim chadashos. What if you just went but during the dancing, you went in, you didn't dance, you went in, you wish Mazdov, I gotta run, and you ran out. Could you be the panim chadashos? So, this is actually a big machlokes, and l'maisa we should probably not rely on it. Fine. What if the panim chadashos, we're back to regular Sheva Brachos, and the panim chadashos left early? If the panim chadashos left early, are you allowed to continue and have Sheva Brachos? And the answer is no. Panim chadashos is a necessity. When it comes to Shabbos and Yontif, there is no need for panim chadashos. We say the Shabbos itself and the Yontif itself is considered the panim chadashos. What about shalosh shudas? So the fil mechaber for shalosh shudas, Shabbos does not count as the panim chadashos for shalosh shudas. I didn't chop exactly why not, but l'maisa it doesn't count as the panim chadashos. Lefi the Ramah, so there's a yesh aimer in the Ramah that says that Shabbos counts as panim chadashos with the tzirif of a drasha. So if you have a drasha on Shabbos, that counts as panim chadashos. Rav Elyashiv says the chosin should be the one to give the drasha, and that will count as panim chadashos. Now, I would say, not all chasanim were created equal. If you have the type of chassan that you could tell him, listen, you're up for the drasha, and he's happy to give it. He's happy to give it the smile. Geshmak! I'll have a beautiful chabur to give over. Then great, let him be the guy who speaks. But if he's going to be the type of chassan that you're going to tell him that, there's you're up for a drasha. We're expecting something good because we have lots of magidei shiurim and chashav tamid chacham that are here to hear your drasha, and let's just say this won't exactly enhance the simcha. Then I think there's a good reason to stay away from that and let one of those chashav tamid chacham give the drasha. Fine. What about Purim, Chol Hamoed, Chanukah? All these times are not considered Purim Chadashos, and you would need a Purim Chadashos to make a Sheva Brachos. Now, let's think for a second. Shalosh Shudas. This happens all the time, this question. Let's get it straight. Shalosh Shudas, after you bench, it's after Shkia. Are you allowed to eat and drink anymore? No. You're not allowed to eat and drink after Shkia once you bench. Could you drink the wine when you bench with a zimun? Are you allowed to drink the wine after the wine that you did a zimun on? So l'maisa we paskin no. In theory, if somebody was the type that always drank, always did benching with a kais, meaning 3 times a day, always benched on a kais, then you would be allowed to do it then, because it's what's the lumdus? Because then it's part of the meal. If the wine is part of the meal, I don't care if you benched already, you can have it. But we're only considering it part of the meal if every time you have a meal, you bench with the kais. Nowadays, even though it's the pashtus of the Shulchan Aruch, nowadays the minhag ha'olam is we don't bench with the kais 3 times a day. So therefore, by Shalosh Shudas on regular Shabbos, you will not drink from a kais of benching, the kais bracha with benching after Shalosh Shudas. What about when you have Sheva Brachos? If you have Sheva Brachos, does the chassan and kala drink from that kais or not? So this is a big fight. So I think the minhag of those less learned is to say, I don't know, what are we supposed to do? Anybody here know what to do? And I think the minhag of the more learned people are to fight about it, where everybody screams you're supposed to do something else. So, what should we do? So I'm going to work with Rev Yashiv's psak, which is like this. That if it's during Bein Hashmashis, then let them drink. Because it's debatable anyways whether there's an isser to drink during Bein Hashmashis. So since it's debatable, it's like a kind of a svek type of idea, and therefore we'll let them drink if it's during Bein Hashmashis. But often by Sheva Brachos, by the time you get to benching, it's well after Bein Hashmashis very often. What do you do then? So, Zot Rav Yashiv, the best thing is you let the chassan bench, so you get that third guy out of there, and you let the chassan bench, and then afterwards they drink. They drink, let them drink a mali lugma, if they're going to daven ma'ariv in that location, let them drink a mali lugma. And if they're going to go to a different location, maybe he could drink a revius, so he could make al geffen afterwards without any sfekus. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. What's the lumdus of Rav Yashiv? The lumdus is like this. It's true that not everybody benches with a kais every meal, but everybody benches with a kais every meal of Sheva Brachos. When it's Sheva Brachos, they're always makbid to use a kais, and now it's Sheva Brachos. So during Sheva Brachos, you can consider the kais to be part of the meal. Okay, that's obviously debatable. It's not so pashut. Now, is the chassan allowed to be the one to make the brachos of the Sheva Brachos? So l'chatchila, no, because we're giving brachos to him, so to speak. He's not supposed to be making any of the brachos. However, if it's a matzif that he's the only one who knows how to make the brachos, let's say he's a Baal Tshuva, and he's having a Sheva Brachos with his family or old friends or whatever it may be, and they all don't know how to make Sheva Brachos, then he could go and make all the Sheva Brachos. By the way, it's not so shver for him to make all of them. The minhag used to be that one person made all the Sheva Brachos. Over time, I guess the idea of being mechabed people, it changed, that nowadays the minhag is that we give it to different people. Fine. Weiter. Now, how long do the Sheva Brachos last? So, the Sheva Brachos last for 7 halachic days, similar to the Shiva Nikim, which is really 6.5 halachic days. It's the day of the chuppah plus additional 6. So let's think about this for a second. If, let's say, it was Sunday, the chuppah. Let's say the chuppah was before Shkia on Sunday. So if the chuppah was before Shkia on Sunday, Sunday is day 1, Shabbos is the last day. If it was on Sunday after Shkia. So Monday is day 1, Sunday is the last day. But when it comes to Tachnun, Ism Melacha, being Mesamechet Kala, then it's 7 days Me'etz Leis. So it's actually interesting that they have different judging points. Now, as I just said, let's say are before Shkia time, right? So day 1 is Sunday. What's day 7? Shabbos. It ends by Shkia. Therefore, in theory, if you're having Shalosh Shudas, which is going to be the last day of Sheva Brachos, even though for you it's still Shabbos, and you haven't made Havdalah, and you haven't taken Shabbos out, and it's even earlier than you're allowed to take Shabbos out. But if it's after Shkia, Lefi the basic Psak Halacha, no more Sheva Brachos, you're done. The Shevet Levi, I think it was the Shevet Levi, says Tzarchin on the Minig HaOlam that people seem to, in this scenario, have Sheva Brachos even after Shkia. Tzarchin, L'chayr you shouldn't. Another thing, this is something that happens. Let's say the order gets messed up. Which bracha were we up to? It could happen by the chuppah. It could happen by a stam Sheva Brachos. This happens. It's definitely something that happens, that the order gets mixed up. Where are we up to? I don't know. I don't know where we're up to. What do you do? So, if your order gets messed up, it is okay. You could go out of order, with one exception. If you do the third bracha of Asher Yotzar before the second bracha of Yotzer Adam, then you lose that second bracha of Yotzer Adam. According to Moshe Rishon Zalman, they say since they're both about Yetzirah, so to speak, if you already did the third one, the Asher Yotzar, you can no longer do the Yotzer Adam. But outside of that, if you mess up or skip, you just go back. Now, try to remember that. It's a little difficult, but that's how it is. Now, another interesting point is if you have a special meal for the Chassan and Kala with 3 people but without a minyan during Sheva Brachos, the afternoon you have the Chassan and Kala, let's have a nice lunch together. The Chassan and Kala popped into the in-laws' house the afternoon, the Sheva Brachos is in for 5 days. Let's have something nice together. Let's order pizza because the Chassan and Kala came. And the family eats together, and also maybe there's one person outside of the basic family. Uncle Wayne's here, Uncle David, Uncle whoever's here. So so do we make? What do we do? So we don't have a minyan, so you can't make Sheva Brachos, but you still make a Shakol Baralach Vaday. You make the first bracha. That's something that you add on even without a minyan. As long as the meal is for them, you have a zimin, and you have at least one person who's out of the direct family. Then you would do it. Okay, we should all have simchas, we should all share in simchas, and we should have many Sheva Brachos to go to. And remember, don't stress out about needing a Sheva Brachos for every meal, every day. Once again, you do not need Sheva Brachos every day, and we should enjoy the Sheva Brachos, especially when they're done for the Chassan and Kala, with the Panim Chadashis that's there to enhance the simcha, with a minyan of at least 7 people that ate there, and with the Chassan not doing any work, and the Kala preferably not doing any work during those days, and we should all have lots of simchas.